friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10 list, or some other game-related topic that happens to be on my mind at the time. So this last weekend, I discovered a game. It had been mentioned, I'd seen it in the Essen list, I'd seen a video or two about it, and I saw that it came out in the US and was available, and I bought it, and my friend is visiting me, and so I said, I have a game that just sounds fantastically fun, and we should play it. And we did, and it was fantastically fun, and that's why I'm here to talk about it today. That game is Bomb Busters. So it has this sort of cute Bosco style almost artwork. Or I guess, the artwork looks like, what's that game with the Crime City? Was it Crime City? The one with the, why can't I not remember its name? It might be Crime City. I have to check that. It's that one that you have like the sort of Where's Waldo type, why can't I remember that? Macro Crime City. That's the name. It has kind of that style of artwork. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's not related to that game at all. It's not the same designer. This is by Hiyashi Hayashi, Japanese designer, also responsible for Yokohama, which is a great game, and several other great games. So I was really interested to try it. So what is it about? Well, you are a bomb disposal expert, as are your fellow players, and you are trying to cut all of the wires correctly so that the bomb is diffused and does not explode. If you do that, you win. There's also red wires, and if you cut them, well, you fail to win. In fact, you lose. And if you make too many mistakes, you can lose as well. So if you successfully get rid of all of the wire tiles by working together with deduction but very limited communication, you can win the game. So how does it work? Well, let's go over to Board Game Geek and see if we can find a picture or two. So here is an example. Let me open this up and remember to show it this time. Here we have it. This is an example of the game kind of set up. So you are going to have these. They go for their numbers from 1 to 10, and there's 4 of each number. There are also a few point ones, so a 7.1, for example, which is a yellow wire and doesn't match with a 7. And then there's also red wires, which are always 0.5. On your turn, for the most part, you are going to look at the information you have, right? Like I know here I have all these 12s. So since I know I have all the 12s, I can solo cut them. I can just discard all 4 of the 12s and say, 12s are done. Now, that's not going to happen all that often, but when it does, or for example, if 2 of them were already visible, you can tell you have the last 2. You could show them like that. More realistically, though, you're going to pick a number that you have, and you're going to point at a tile that someone else has and say, well, that is an 8. In this case, I can tell, well, I can't, but because I can't see what the other person has, but you're going to try and guess what the other person has. If you're correct, they reveal it, and you then show one of yours that matches. And that's how you're going to slowly discard the tiles. And they go out right in front, so you can sort of see where things are. For example, if I were looking at this one that's in the picture from the other side, I would see, okay, well, there's a 9 here, and there's a 6 here, so I know that these are either a 7 or an 8, but I also know, looking at this board here, because you're going to cover up spots with a token once it's completely eliminated, I know there are no more 7s. So, assuming, and I also can see here there's this red token, I know there's an 8.5, which could be a red wire. So if I were trying to guess this, I'd be thinking, okay, well, I know for a fact that these 2 are either 8s or 8.5s, so maybe I'll go with the one on the left because they are always ordered from lowest to highest, so I know for sure that this one is not going to blow us up. I would guess this one's an 8. And if I win, if I'm correct, then I win, or well, then it's successful. You also have equipment, and the equipment isn't really shown in this picture, but it's these cards. Well, here's one up here. This is the Post-it note. I know what it does. It lets you identify one of your tokens. But as soon as you've had a match of at least 2 4s, this card becomes active, and it's a bonus action, some sort of way to give additional information or help your fellow bomb disposal experts. If you get all of the tokens discarded, you win. Obviously, if there's a red, you can't ever discard that, but if you have only reds left, you can reveal them and discard them, and that's kind of how you'll win with that. Anyway, you're going to play this back and forth, each person taking a turn, giving some information, trying to make a guess, using equipment, whatever it may be, until you either successfully defuse the bomb, or until someone cuts a red wire, or this tracker goes all the way down to 0, in which case the bomb explodes, everybody dies, and you have to set it up and try again. Now you can see this is depicted on the box, there are 66 scenarios in the box, and so the scenarios are going to do various things. One of them adds a timer. One of them adds 3 red wires that are handed out, distributed evenly, and gives you a special action where if you can point to the 3 red wires, you can just cut them all. And as long as you got all 3 correct, the bomb doesn't blow up, and that helps. Various small changes, some of them might be bigger changes, some are more equipment. Well, that looks like a Gen Con stand or something like that. I guess that wouldn't be Gen Con because it looks like it's in French. Anyway, regardless, that's kind of how you play the game. You're working together, very limited communication, a lot of good deduction, but ultimately a very manageable puzzle that you're trying to figure out. So that's how it works. So what makes the game special? Well, I actually just talked about some of those things. It is a very manageable puzzle. There are not a lot of rules here, right? On your turn, you're either going to pick somebody else's number and guess what it is, or hopefully have figured out what it is, and then reveal one of your own if you're correct. Or you're going to be revealing that you have all the remaining tokens of a particular number, and it's called a solo cut. You just kind of cut all those wires yourself. And there's not a whole lot of rules, right? I mean, each scenario is going to add a small twist, but the core game really is what I described. Another thing that's special about it is there's a lot of variety. I mentioned there are 66 missions. I've not played all 66. I played about 15 of them or so, although there were a couple we skipped because they didn't look all that interesting. One was just set at a 15-minute timer, and I don't think we ever made it to 15 minutes anyway, so that would have just been the same game. We went on to something more interesting when it was, I don't know, cut the 1, the 7, and the 6 in that particular order. It's always some sort of small puzzle, a little bit of variety. It's a lot of ways to kind of mix up the core experience, but not adding a lot of rules and not really taking away from the core experience. One of my favorite modules is imperfect information. Like, you might know that there's a 6.5, an 8.5, and a 12.5, but I think there's one. And you know that those are the 3 possibilities for the red wires, but only one of them is actually in there, or only 2 of them are actually in there. So you have some sort of misinformation, but it's known what the possibilities are. I like those twists on the puzzle. I like that the deduction is pretty easy. It's not. I mean, this isn't going to be keeping track of 15 pieces of information. There's a lot, everything sort of becomes open information. And if you guess wrong, you get to know what you guessed wrong. And especially if it's a red wire and you lose. But whatever it is, you're going to get some information on what it is. So the puzzle is usually the kind of thing you can figure out. You have the equipment to help you. You have the ability. Everyone has a double detector, which means you can, excuse me, You can pick two things and guess the number, and as long as one of them's right, you don't lose. It's a very manageable puzzle, but you can feel really smart. Everyone has kind of their turn where they figure out something or they make a guess that's pretty good, right? It's not 100%. Maybe they're distinguishing between two possibilities, but more evidence is on the side of this one, and you sort of guess correctly, and you feel great. So it's a lot of good deduction, a lot of working together, not discussion. And because of that, there's not going to be someone who's in charge and trying to tell everyone what to do, but everyone really gets their moment to shine. And I like that the information becomes more available as the game goes by, so you don't have to worry about remembering all these kinds of things. It's just a really solid cooperative deduction experience, and I think would work for most ages. I'm trying to see what it says. It says 14 plus, but as long as a younger child could handle the sort of figuring it out portion of it, um, there's nothing in here that you you couldn't play with a younger child, as long as they were maybe 8 or 9 or 10. I don't know. So where's the but? What don't I like about it? Well, the component quality isn't great. These little tiles, they feel like they're going to get scratched, and they're these small little tokens, and it's difficult to shuffle them. Right, you move them around on the table, they're going to flip over. They're tiny, thin little things, a weird shape. So I ultimately got a draw bag and put them in there so that you can at least draw them out in your hand and kind of hide them. So people don't accidentally see what they are. But I worry that they could mark, that they could tear. They're black, so any wear and tear is going to chip them. I wish they were like an acrylic tile or something. I think that would be a lot nicer. Um, some of the scenarios are just okay. I have not looked at them all, but it's not a campaign though, so you can easily skip around. But I just found some of them were underwhelming. But there's 66 of them, so and now the first 8 are really training missions. 8 is kind of the full game. But if even barring that, there's still 56 missions, 58 missions. I shouldn't do math on on streaming, but there's still a lot of missions you can play even if you exclude kind of the tutorial. The rules were pretty simple, but there were a couple of things that I kind of had to figure out. Um, Not a lot of buts. The other one, though, I will say is I think this game is going to be best at 4. Playing it at 2 was good. I had a great time with it. But you have sort of 2 trays of information, which means, of course, that you have half of the tiles in the deck in the game generally in front of you. So, it's easier to kind of figure out where things were. I think it just dialed the difficulty down. But I didn't have a bad time at all. I think with 4, though, there's going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little harder. I think if you were to play it with 3, one person has to do 2 like sets and the others each have 1. I think that's craziness. But at 4 players where everyone's kind of just managing one tray, I think that's going to be the perfect way to play it. 2's okay. I just don't know that that it has all the tension that a 4 player would have. So anyway, those are some things about the game, some buts. But as I already mentioned, I really like this game. It's lots of fun. It's very simple, very easy to get into, but you feel great playing it. You feel like, you're in command. You feel like you're running the show. You're giving people information. My friend said this is like the game if somebody took it and decided to add fun. The game, of course, is not the game, sorry, the mind. It's the mind if somebody decided to add fun. The mind is a game where you're kind of blindly playing cards and face up, and you're trying to play them in order with no communication and no information. And it's kind of a dumb experience, even though it can be fun from time to time. This one, it's kind of like that, right? It's very much deduction. It's kind of like The Crew. It's kind of like any game where you're working together with limited information, but this one does it really well. I had such a fantastic time with it. What's my rating? I give it a 9 out of 10. This is one, the game length is spot on. The difficulty, is pretty manageable, but still fun, and you can still lose, and you have to be on your toes. It helps you feel smart if you make a good choice, and yet there's a lot of variety and equipment and special abilities and things to explore. I really had a great time with this one, and I'm looking forward to playing it again. Obviously, try before you buy. Although, it's a small box, which is good, and if you don't like it, you can easily give it to someone who will. Um, but I like it a lot, 9 out of 10 for me. And that is Bomb Busters. We've busted it. It exploded. In an explosion of fun, I'll probably stop. Quit while I'm ahead. Anyway, that's all I've got for you this week. I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I hope to see you back again next week for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.